Hello, welcome. This is the live stream for March 15th, 2017, and I am Dana Morningstar. So welcome. Let's see, we've got some people hopping on, and I have the date wrong in here, but I'm getting that fixed as we speak. And so while people are hopping on, I just wanted to let you guys know, if you are, I don't know, if you don't already know, I guess, I recently started a podcast. So if you like the live streams, but you don't want to watch them on YouTube, if you want to listen to them when you're driving or cleaning the house or what have you, and you don't want to use all your data, the podcast can be a great way to go. Hey, Ryan's here. Hello. Larry, welcome. Diane, hey. Welcome. Lou. Lots of people are hopping on. So podcasts are great. We've got, I am now on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. But just fair warning, it's still a huge learning curve. So yeah, just bear with me. I think I only have maybe 5 or so episodes on SoundCloud right now. I'm still kind of trying to, I don't know, figure out they're all out of order. I don't even know, like, how does that even happen? Like, I don't even, it's so frustrating. So getting it figured out. Lucy, welcome. Carrie, hello. G. Marie, Sharon, Lisa, Chelsea, Lily, Tanitria, welcome. SC, Lily, Rock Angel Loves, KD, Daisy, Donna, lots of people. Laurencia, Earth to Janet, that's cute. Hi. Hi. Hey, Bear. So welcome. If you guys are new here, please know that there is no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question or anything other than a question. This group is just a time every month that we meet at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. It goes for, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours, kind of depending. And it's just our time to ask questions and to give support to each other. It's just kind of a nice time that we have every single week. So please make yourself comfortable and make yourself at home. The chat can be a little fast at times. So if you find it overwhelming, like you're not alone in that. So you can always email me your questions too if you want me to answer them. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the chat, you can email me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and I will do my best to get your question on the live stream. So how is everybody doing? How's your week? What's new? Oh, how funny. Adriana says, hello, everyone. My son wanted to say hi. Hi, friend Dana. He loves listening to you, even though he's only 2. That's so cute. Well, I'm glad. I think that he would be the youngest person so far that we've had that listens to the show, but that's exciting. I think that in a way, I think it's great because, the more he can be around I think the more that these kinds of discussions can happen with discussing, because really everything that we talk about, it's all about learning to get reconnected with who we are. And that's the beauty of children, is they have that down. Like, they know who they are. They know what they like. They know what we don't like. It's the world, right? It's when we start exposing them to the world that throws them off balance. And then they start, all of that self-doubt kind of creeps in. But if we can keep that and instill that in them and then encourage that, that's just when the magic happens. Okay, lots of questions coming in. Okay. Yeah, Bear, great question. Says, hey Dana, How does a therapist know if a person is cluster B or has unprocessed trauma? So, I'm not a therapist, but my guess would be that, I think kind of most people that tend to have like a cluster B personality disorder tend to have unprocessed trauma. So those things kind of tend to go hand in hand because those personality disorders are more like coping mechanisms. So either they didn't learn at some point in development to relate effectively to other people in order to get their needs met, or they just kind of learned this like maladaptive way of getting their needs met. So I think it's very common for those things to go hand in hand. So one of the questions that I got was actually involving that, and it was, let me see if I can find it real quick here. Hold on a second. It was, give me just a second here. Oh goodness, where did it go? Oh, it's the first one. It's the first one on the page. I didn't even see that one. It says, what if I think EMDR is what the abusive person in my life needs due to them having a lot of trauma in their life? I recently started learning about EMDR therapy. It effectively helps people who suffer from unprocessed trauma. Many people who suffer from PTSD behave like a cluster B person. My question is, how, and then, okay, so very similar question there. And the challenge with that is if we have clarity for what another person needs to do, that can be such a frustrating place to be because we don't have power over what they do. So just like I could have the clarity of, yes, this person really needs to go to rehab, or yes, this person really should go to art school, right? Or yes, this person would be really benefit from traveling to Europe. Like I could have all of this clarity for somebody else, but it doesn't, if they're not motivated to actually do that for themselves, then, there's nothing else that we can do except say, hey, have you considered EMDR? It's really fantastic. It's something that you might want to look into. I've heard it does wonders for therapy. The problem is, most of us, I think in general, we tend to be sensitive to criticism. So especially if somebody says, boy, your behavior, you're doing these things and you've gone through all of this trauma. Basically, if we're insinuating there's something wrong with you, here's the solution. No matter how benign the solution that we're offering, it's still going to come across potentially as an insult. So a person's most likely going to have their defenses up with that. And that's kind of normal, especially if a person doesn't have that insight that they really have a problem. So, yeah, it's a big challenge. All any of us can do is what we can do. So you can mention it. You could mention saying, hey, is this something that you would be open to? I see, and I would maybe frame it in a way that makes it seem like, because make it seem like you're concerned, but that you're not trying to be critical. Saying something like, I came across this really interesting therapy. It's EMDR, and here's what it's about. And is this something that I just thought I would mention it because you've told me in the past that you went through X, Y, and Z. And so no pressure. I just thought, I came across this and then kind of there you are. Like just kind of leave it there and then let them make the decision. Most people respond the best to honey instead of vinegar. So if you can just present it in a very non-threatening way, you might have more success with them at least not shutting down completely and just being defensive. I hope that answers your question. So Namal says, Dana, did you change your hair? Okay, yes, kind of. So I took a nap when I got home from work, and I had total bed hair. It's very flat. So I normally wear it on the other side, but it just really, I didn't have any time to do anything with it. So I flipped it over. It's as good as it's gonna get. So you know, it's moments like these where I wish I had a podcast, like didn't have video. It would just be so much easier. Okay, gosh, lots of questions. And Bear says, Dana, EMDR can't cure a cluster B, and they behave the same. So and again, I'm not a therapist. My understanding of this is if a person has trauma, right? So you have kind of this wound, and especially if it happens at a young age, because especially when we're young, we're shaped by the situations and circumstances and our family and our culture. All of these things have an impact on who we end up becoming, and so our personality just kind of grows around that. So these personality disorders are different. It's one of the theories, at least, is they're thought to be these main defense mechanisms to kind of surviving or coping with these different types of dysfunctional environments. And so kind of the thought is if you can heal or at least start getting at the trauma, then you have a chance at kind of disabling some of these defense mechanisms to actually kind of break things down and then work towards helping this person build on their strengths and build them back up again. So they're oftentimes very intertwined, and it's a challenge. I think DBT therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is one of the more like common treatments for borderline personality disorder, that is based in like mindfulness, very much like Eastern thought, with controlling emotions and kind of slowing things down and observing emotions. That to me is such a fantastic skill. I wish that was part of core curriculum for kids like in elementary school. So I think really anybody could benefit from going through DBT. I think anybody could benefit from going through EMDR, because I think part of the human experience is pain, and most people experience some form of trauma. And so I think what many people think of as trauma, we tend to think of trauma as generally something extreme, but sometimes it doesn't even have to be necessarily extreme. It's more of how our brain is processing what we experience. So, for somebody, their parents might divorce, and that's not a big deal. For somebody else, their parents might divorce, and that's a huge trauma in their life. Somebody, might be in an abusive relationship. Another, two people might be in the same. Well, here's another example. Two people might be growing up in a household where they have a physically abusive parent, or even a verbally abusive parent, and one child decides, I will never be like that, and it never is. And then the other child, probably just doesn't question this and ends up becoming exactly like that parent. The human brain and personality development, it's so interesting, and it really boils down to, in large part, like how people really perceive the world around them. Okay, Britt asks, how does a narcissistic parent treat a child differently than a normal parent? Yes, Namal, very good answer. Namal says, a normal parent doesn't make love conditional. Yes, so kind of along those same lines. So like a narcissistic parent is one that is using, abusing, exploiting, or neglecting their child in order to get their own self-esteem needs met. So these kinds of parents, these are the parents that are like, okay, I love you, but only if you do X, Y, and Z. I will support you. I will be, very kind of on your side, as long as you behave exactly the way as long as you make all of the decisions and you be the kind of person that I want you to be. And that's problematic because, ideally, we all have this driving sense to be individuals. I mean, that's kind of why we're here, is to grow and be kind of the highest and best expression of who we are as individuals. If we're with a parent who doesn't acknowledge that, and if they're in their eyes, they're like, you are my child, you belong to me, that kind of mentality. If I tell you that you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. If I tell you that you're going to play soccer, you're going to play soccer. It's all about the parent. It's not all about nurturing the child and helping them to discover who they are and what their likes and dislikes and wants and needs are. So that's actually the gal that coined the term narcissistic abuse. Her name is Alice Miller. And that's really what it boils down to. Narcissistic abuse is when you've got, and she's talked about it more in terms of parents with children, but when you have a parent who is using a child in order to get their self-esteem needs met. Because, like I was just saying, the flip side of that is if the parent's using the child to get their self-esteem needs met, then the child's self-esteem needs are not being met. And the child's sense of self isn't cultivated or nurtured. So then what ends up happening is as that child grows up, the child doesn't really have a sense of self. And then kind of to tie into what Bear was talking about. So here you have this child who's growing up in this home who is experiencing very conditional love, but of course doesn't know any different because, we don't know. Like what we grow up in is what we tend to think is normal, or for the most part normal. And so if you have a child that's growing up in a home like that, they're going to develop different ways to kind of, quote unquote, survive that home life. So you might have a child that develops more of like that codependent type personality, that very ingratiating type personality, the people pleasing, the walking on eggshells, the, I'll be everything that you want me to be in exchange for your love. Or the flip side of that, where you have a child that becomes more along the lines of, that borderline personality or, narcissistic or even sociopathic, where it's all about them. So they've been so kind of ground down and snuffed out, or the opposite, where they've been so spoiled and glorified, but generally under the context of being a golden child. Like that you've got a parent that's a narcissistic parent that's spoiling the child because the child reminds them of them. So either way, the child's not able to develop like their authentic self. And so because they don't have this like healthy sense of self, they develop this like false sense of self. And so they can become like the social chameleon and, tend to really react, be very reactive, be very impulsive, be very, it's all about them. They kind of stay locked into that developmental stage where it's just all about them. So those are just some theories on it. People are complex, so there's a lot more to it, but I hope that helps. Peachy Keen says, I'm a codependent in a relationship. How do I change this behavior? All I do is attract guys with narcissistic behavior. Yeah, I get it. So, that's such a big question, and that's such a great question. I would say a good place to start is there's a handful of videos on YouTube. I would start learning a lot about codependency and healthy boundaries and really diving into that. So I did a series. I need to get back to it. Started a series, I should say, called Red Flags of Codependency. And I think that is as good a place as any to start. And I go through like love bombing and kind of the initial stages of a problematic relationship, and how, at least from my own experience, how and why I kept getting caught up with these things. And I think my experience is not unique to me, which is why I tend to bring up a lot of my experiences, because just like there's patterns of, more of like the narcissistic behavior with how they lie and how they manipulate and how they go about doing these things. There's a lot of patterns with more of like the empathetic kind of codependent type behavior with how we go about things. So check out that series. And like I said, YouTube, there's lots. Ross Rosenberg is another person who speaks extensively about codependency. What's her name? Pia Melody is, I think, fantastic. Look up the term to empath. I think you might be surprised as to how much that relates to you as well. So that can be very eye-opening. But really, as far as it comes to like attracting other people, the way I like to look at it is we all attract a wide range of people, and we can't really help who we attract, but we can help how long they stay in our lives. So this is where having healthy standards and healthy boundaries comes into play. So if you're finding, problematic people are kind of, slipping into your life, it happens. They're really good at it. Like they're really good about doing the mirroring and telling, kind of being that social chameleon and being everything that you need them to be, and talking the talk and even walking the walk for like the first 30, 60, 90 days, and really coming across like a soulmate. They do a really great job at that. So try to not get so down on yourself if they do slip under your radar, because it happens, and it happens to like anybody and everybody. It really, really does. It's more important that when you start seeing that something's off, that you start distancing yourself, if not fully cut off contact. You need to move yourself to a place where you feel safe and sane at all times, with all people in all situations, whatever that might be for you. So, and healthy boundaries, it's where it's at. So, once you're spotting this kind of behavior and, they're trying to move fast, they're trying to rush that intimacy, they're wanting to, it's boundary pushes, right? It's you saying that you've got to be in bed by 9:30 and them wanting to stay up and talk until 10:30. It's them wanting to, Netflix and chill, right? Like on the first or second date. It's them just all of these little things that feel off, or that feel too soon, or whatever they're doing that's making you feel like, oh, this isn't for me. Once you're aware of how they're kind of sliding under your radar, once your awareness is seriously like it's such a big step. It's like half the battle right there. So once you can realize, okay, this is how they're getting in, then you can start working towards being more aware of that, and you can see it when it's happening, and then you can distance yourself. But having healthy boundaries, having healthy standards, treating yourself with respect and dignity really does go a long way, because most manipulative people, they like to move fast because they're targeting a person for supply, and they're exploiting their vulnerabilities. So, and anybody can be a source of supply. So if they can't get the supply from us because we have boundaries, then they're gonna move on. Like they very rarely play like the long game. And even if they do try to, there's going to be enough red flags along the way that you'll be able to hop out of harm's way. So it's a learning curve to all of this. Just so you know, it really is. I mean, I'm a big fan of when a person goes through a relationship with a narcissistic person, I think it's a really good idea to really not date for at least a year, And during that time, to spend time going out and meeting new people. I'm a huge fan of the website meetup.com for this reason. I'm not a sponsor of them. I'm just saying it like it is. I think that can be a great way to go out and meet new people and paying attention to how you feel and getting your radar, kind of seeing how things go and paying attention to those friendships that you're making and what are the new people like that you're bringing into your life. Because I think what tends to happen is a lot of people, after they're in a relationship with an emotional manipulator of any kind, they tend to feel they're like their life's blown apart and they're devastated and they're scared and they're overwhelmed and they're also incredibly vulnerable and don't even realize it. And so then what happens is they tend to get swept up with more emotional manipulators, even as friends. So new people in their life tend to be emotional manipulators. They tend to be like the ones that swoop in. They're like, oh, I'll take care of you. I'll be your friend. I'll do all these things. And at first that can feel really great and it's a weird form of like love bombing, but it's like the friendship version of love bombing, I guess. And then within a few weeks or a few months, generally, if that happens, then the person's like, oh, whoa, this person's really kind of controlling and difficult and manipulative. And there's like a lot of similarity here, and starting to make you uncomfortable. And it can make a person wonder, like, is it them or is it me? Do I just have issues because I just went through this relationship? Am I seeing the situation clearly? And generally what it is it's just emotional manipulators. They just, they don't know how to really relate to people in a healthy, normal way. And so they swoop in to people that are, that they do know how to somewhat relate to, which is vulnerable people. So it can be good to slow things down, to practice making some friends, keep things light, going out for coffee, going out for dinner, what have you, and just paying attention to how you feel in that relationship. The goal, frankly, is to feel good. Like in general, like in life in general. The goal is just to feel safe and secure and to have clarity, to know where you stand, to feel comfortable around friends and around significant others and anybody else that's in your life. So if you're friends with somebody and you start feeling confused, like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, is it me or is it them? Odds are it's them. And the reason that we're experiencing that confusion is because we know that there's a problem, but we wish we didn't. And that's where it's cognitive dissonance. It's where that confusion comes from. So if you're kind of getting your sea legs back with getting back out into the world, starting with making friends, like casual acquaintances, I should say. It's people that you're going out, you're playing trivia with, you're doing whatever you want, Chinese cooking, whatever you want to do, in a very non-threatening way. And the whole exercise in this is to pay attention to how you feel and then practice adjusting accordingly, backing things up a little bit. So learning how to distance yourself and then learning how to move forward in like a healthy pace. So now you've got this person that started off as a total stranger and then it kind of moved forward to casual acquaintance and then it moves forward a little more into friendship. And so there's different boundary levels with each one. And you're in control. Like, you set the pace of this. So, and the boundaries progress as trust and time progresses. That's a big one. There's a link at the bottom of this live stream it's called What Are Healthy Boundaries, which is a diagram that I took from, is Healing the Child Within by Charles Whitfield. And then I kind of expanded on some of his concepts in that book. But I thought that was so helpful. He did kind of these little circles, diagrams of what's a healthy boundary. That was very helpful. So check that out. Okay. Yeah, Tanitria says, I started out feeling bad when I realized my last relationship, he was a narcissist. The behavior, the lying, the love bombing, he was just so different from my ex-husband who was mean. But thank you for your help. So, yes, you're welcome. But your experience is very, very common. Very common. And so this is exactly what I was just talking about, how people, they're primed to get tangled up with another abusive person and they don't even realize it. Because let's back it up a little bit. It makes total sense, right? Especially if you were married to or involved with a mean person, more of like that overt or obvious problematic person. It makes sense that you'd be like, boy, I'm never dating or marrying that again, right? And so a normal person would be like, okay, I've learned my lesson. I am steering clear of that. And so what do we do, right? We tend to do like move towards the exact opposite. But unfortunately, then what that is it's the opposite of an overt narcissist is a covert narcissist. And the covert narcissist, so the word covert means more hidden or less obvious. And so that's where you see a lot of this superficial charm and the love bombing and the intensity and the whirlwind romance and that soulmate connection and just this level of intensity. And especially if a person's coming out of a relationship with an overt narcissist, they can be so primed to get hung up with that, because that all of that covert kind of abusive behavior can feel healthy. And so then what happens when a person gets out of that relationship, then they're really confused. They're like, well, wait a minute. I thought I needed to stay away from people who like lied and cheated and stole and called me names and put me down or hit, threatened, did all these things. I thought I was I didn't see this guy coming until I, married him, and then he was awful. So then I did the exact opposite, and I went to Prince Charming. And then Prince Charming was really Prince Harming. And I don't know who's safe now. Because if the mean guys aren't safe and the nice guys aren't safe, where does that leave me? And that's so, so, so common. And so if a person isn't able to kind of figure out and this is also very common, where they're not able to figure out like, okay, what's going on here? What they tend to link up is, I must just be a magnet for these people. Like I must just be cursed. Or what they do is they'll start linking up incorrect cause and effect. And again, very understandable. So if we're not understanding the underlying dynamics of a situation, this is what we all do. So it's really easy to start connecting, because your brain's searching to make connections in order to keep you safe. That's its job. And so it's going to start making connections. If it can't figure it out, it's going to be grabbing at straws to make connections. So it's going to be saying, okay, you know what? We're not going to date a guy who is, who owns his own business. Assuming, let's just say that one of the guys owned his own business. Or if, let's say, the other guy drove a BMW. I'm not going to date a guy that drives a BMW. Or if the other guy had a mustache. I'm not going to date a guy that has a mustache and a goatee. Or I'm not going to date an older guy. Or I'm not going to date a guy that I met off the internet. And there's all kinds of things that our brain is trying to connect, thinking, okay, what lessons can I learn from this in order to keep me safe? And the reality is it's the biggest piece that's missing is learning to trust your intuition. So, and truly learning to trust yourself. Because here's another thing. People tend to doubt themselves, understandably so, right? You're in a relationship with an emotional manipulator. They erode a person's sanity because it's all of the lies, it's all of the manipulations. And so when a person gets out of that dynamic, they're like, I don't know what's real anymore. And I can't tell if it's me or if it's them, or maybe I'm bruised, mentally from this relationship, or maybe I'm just broken. because I don't trust anymore, and I want to find love, and I want to find friends, and I want to be a part, I want to have a great life, but I don't know how to do that. And so then they look outside of themselves. So when they're meeting these new people, and they're feeling like something's off, and they're like, oh, I can't tell. Like, I don't know if it's me and I have these unresolved issues, or if this person really is in fact problematic. So maybe I'm going to go ask my friend, or I'm going to go ask a sibling or a parent for their, or a coworker, right? For their perspective. And so if they don't pick up on the signs that you're picking up on, or the vibes is really what it is, like the vibes that you're picking up on, it's really easy to think, okay, well, Jill at work says that he's this really great guy. So I have all of these, like, I'm not really sure, something kind of feels off, but Jill thinks he's a really nice guy. So, and he's been so good to me so far, so it must just be me. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with this relationship, even though I don't have any peace about it. And then that's a problem, because it's so imperative that we learn to trust ourselves completely. Even if we're in a whole room full of people that disagree with us, if you know that something's off, it's because, if you're getting that vibe that something's off, it's because something's off. And to be okay with like backing things up to where you don't feel like things are off, to where you can keep yourself at a place where you're safe and sane. I don't know if you've watched any of my Red Flags of a Narcissist series, but I think that's incredibly helpful. Another movie, if you're up for it, which I think is the best example of that covert love bombing behavior, it was one of my favorite movies of all times. This is going to date me. It's How Stella Got Her Groove Back. If you guys have seen that movie. And that's the author's true story. And it's this amazing love story. Go back and watch that movie now. And then when you're done watching it, Google on YouTube, or go to YouTube, look up Terry McMillan is the author's name. Terry McMillan and her divorce. And she did two different interviews with Oprah about it. And very, very eye-opening. So if you look at her story in that, if you can take away the Hollywood, it's just, it's such a good example of it, because she went from this real awful, mean husband, got divorced, went to Jamaica, got tangled up with sweet, sweet Winston, and it was this whirlwind romance. She knew something was wrong. She kept saying, this is too fast. How can you love me? You're half my age. This doesn't make any sense. And he kept pushing it. Oh, Stella, how can you say this? You're magnificent. You're so wonderful. You're so perfect. And even her friends and family were like, this doesn't feel right. But he was able to charm all of them. I don't want to ruin the rest of the story. And, but I think it's worth watching. I think the odds of that he was actually targeting her for money, especially with the way their divorce, everything went down, is like really, really high. And I don't know. I don't want to ruin it for you, but that's my take. That's my 2 cents on their relationship and what actually happened there. Lana says, how can I know if I was a narcissist? Because I feel like I was. Not anymore, but I grew up in a dysfunctional family. So there's a term out there called fleas. And it comes from the concept of, you lay down with dogs, you get fleas. That's not really flattering for anybody involved, right? But it's basically that we pick up, like fleas, we pick up behaviors from our environment. And with fleas, you can get rid of them. So they're just these kind of maladaptive behaviors that a person picks up along the way. And the good thing is, once you're aware that, okay, I have some problematic behavior, like I don't want to be that person. Once you have awareness of it, then you can actually work towards changing it. So, you know, most people, I mean, I think most people, myself included for sure, you know, there's things about us that we want to change. And that's part of life. It's personal growth. It's the journey of all of this. And so I don't know if I'd really try to get too hung up on a label. I would really focus more on like behavior. So if you can spot within yourself, specifically, this is what I do or don't do that is problematic. And this is what I want to try to change. And then actually working towards that. Because the biggest problem with narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder is that sincere lack of insight and that sincere lack of like remorse for any wrongdoing. So if a person's acting in a way where they just don't care, they don't care about other people, they don't care about hurting other people, it's all about them. You know, they have no problem with using, abusing, or exploiting or neglecting other people. That's problematic. But if a person's aware of like, boy, you know what? You know, my mom or my dad used to do X, Y, and Z, and now I'm doing it. I don't want to do that. If you have that awareness and you have that sincere desire to change, then by all means, go for it. You know, awareness is half the battle. So I hope that helps. Okay. Sorry, I'm way behind in the conversation here. Yeah. Alcudia Babe says, I find when you shut down or go gray rock, narcissists really push you and won't stop until they get a reaction. Yes. So much of that, it's like a little kid, right? So if the little kid is like, I want ice cream or I want a toy. And you're like, no, remember we talked about this. Like we're going into the store, we're on a mission, and that does not involve buying toys, right? And they're like, okay. And then, 10 seconds later, I really want this toy. And you're like, you're trying to just stay. And then they start escalating, right? Now, next thing they're starting to raise their voice. Now they're starting to cry. Now they're in like full meltdown. Like they're on the ground screaming and screaming, right? It's embarrassing and it's all designed to get you to cave in. Manipulative adults have their own version of that. So if you're trying to go gray rock and act like it's not affecting you, they know, okay, I'm going to just keep pushing because I know deep down this is getting to her. So I'm just going to keep pushing until she cracks. And your job in that is to just hold your boundary and to just really act like it's so no big deal. Just like you would a little kid. Like you're not, so if a little kid is in full out meltdown mode in the middle of Target, right? You don't want to match their level of intensity because then they increase that level of intensity. So if you're just like, what, I told you we're not getting a toy, and like you start raising your voice and you're freaking out and then they're screaming even louder and everybody thinks that you're this awful parent with this awful child, like it's just this awful situation, right? If you can just stay calm and act like it's just, they're not even getting to you. And your blood is boiling, right? You're just like, it's taken all you got to just stay calm and to not just, freak out on your child. It's the same. It's the same with an adult. And it's hard. It is. It's really hard when somebody's provoking you. But that's the way to do it. So to kind of distance yourself as much as you can emotionally and to distance yourself to a place where you can ideally stay curious. You're like, oh, isn't this so interesting? Like, how are they going to react to this? How am I going to react to this? Why am I reacting in this way? And what do I need to do differently in order for me to stay safe and sane? Like, would it help for me to just act like, oh, it's just no big deal, and then to go get in my car and scream, or to go get in my car and call a friend, or what have you? So it's just kind of developing different strategies. Okay. Conchetta says, hi, I hate that I still love him and I can't move on. It's been 1 year. I'm still in pain. Why? Help, please. I hate this feeling. So a couple of things with that. I think it helps to kind of rephrase what you're telling yourself. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I think it's helpful to separate, like, you probably don't love him. And I know that might sound harsh because you're like, no, Dana, I feel really, really intense. I think about him day and night. Like, this is love. But let's back up a little bit and let's examine, like, what is love, right? Like, love is, it's based on honesty and trust and, appreciation and dignity and respect. And if those elements aren't there, then it's not love. It's trauma bonding. It's that level of intensity. But that level of intense, neediness, craving, that's trauma bonding. That's not love. So it can really help to make that difference in your mind, and to tell yourself, because I had to do this too, to tell yourself, okay, I don't love him. I love who I thought he was. Because odds are that guy was probably pretty good. I know with my exes, who I thought they were amazing men. Like, anybody would have loved those guys, but that's not who they were. And so separating that and realizing it's like falling in love with a con artist. Yeah, the con part of that person is incredibly charming and likable and all of those things, but that's not who they are. So really separating that out. So if you're telling yourself, I really love him, to slow down and reframe that to be, I really love the man that I thought he was, or I really loved the man that I thought he could be. To make that very clear in your mind. I think just doing that will give you a lot more clarity and peace, because it is really confusing if we're using, if we're using the word love for trauma bonds, because they're two very different things. One is healthy and one is really not healthy. And then it gets a person into a whole host of problems if we're confusing love with trauma bonds, because again, like they're not the same. So, okay, it's been 1 year and you're still in a tremendous amount of pain. I think something to ask yourself is, so when a narcissist comes into our lives, and especially if we do feel like we lost our soulmate, if it's that level of intensity, like I still love the person that I thought he was so much, then odds are that he was able to exploit some sort of vulnerability within you. That vulnerability is still there. So if you can address that vulnerability and work towards getting that, I refer to these vulnerabilities as empty buckets. If you can get this empty bucket filled in a healthy, constructive way, then those feelings, that intensity towards him it'll help to lessen that. Because when we have intense feelings like that, it's generally, and trauma bonding is its own kind of animal within itself, but generally, when we really want something, it's not the thing itself, it's how we think it'll make us feel. And that's a big thing to wrap our minds around. So it's especially if a person's abusive, it's not that you wanted him, it was that there are certain elements of him. So maybe it was that, maybe you were feeling lonely. So maybe it was that sense of connection. Maybe the love bombing made you feel important, or valued. So if you can explore, okay, what vulnerabilities was he exploiting? And then realize, okay, these are still some major things in my life. And so now I need to work towards getting them filled in a healthy way. How can I go about getting these buckets filled in a healthy way? Well, so if you're feeling that lack of connection, then, okay, how can you go about getting connection in a healthy way? Again, I'm a huge fan of meetup.com for this because there's lots of different groups out there. So, around a lot of different interests. So if you like camping or, cooking or going out for dinner or playing cards or going to church or any number of these things, there's lots of people out there that you can connect with that can help fill those buckets of like connection or importance or significance or kind of what have you. But as soon as that vulnerability is addressed, that it'll really help to break that sense of intensity that you're feeling towards him. Okay. Okay, Pebbles asked an interesting question, and I'm going to go with that question and then answer one that I got from an email last week that I thought was really interesting. So the question, where did it go? Pebbles says, are narcissists just doms or dominant people and empaths are submissives? Generally, I think yes. Like that tends to be how that goes. So you've got more of like that domineering personality that's more controlling. So if we're talking about domination and submission in terms of like a BDSM type dynamic, then that's, I think, there's always exceptions to everything, but by and large, yes, that's what that's about. So let me get into this question because this was a fantastic one and segues perfectly from yours. Okay, so this is a question from Lauren who says, Dana, I was wondering if you might touch briefly on this subject in one of your live streams. You've already done a wonderful video on 50 Shades of Grey about a year ago when the movie first came out. Now the second movie is out, and there's been a lot of talk about the books and movies at my office. Everyone loves it. I don't understand how. I didn't read the books or watch any of the movies, nor do I want to, because just the little bit I heard of the content repulsed me. When I expressed my opinion about it to my coworkers, they got oddly defensive with me about it, saying how it's just fiction, so it doesn't influence people. Or that she fixes him in the end, so it's okay. And I'm just like, seriously? One girl came to work after having seen the movie and said, I wish I had my own Christian Grey. So it's not influential, yet you want your own Christian Grey. Side note, this girl who said that is a former victim of abuse. She's had 2 divorces from both abusive men, probably narcissists or even psychopaths. It is so especially interesting to see that level of enjoyment of a film like that from a person who has been abused. I don't get it. What do you think is the appeal? Do you think the author knew that she was writing about and intended for it to be an abusive relationship? I think I can wrap my brain around the kinky sex. Whatever gets people going is their business, but the way Christian Grey is a textbook abuser, how does that go unnoticed? And to even suggest that a person like that can be fixed is the most troublesome part to me. Do women love these movies because they like the idea that they can fix someone so troubled? I just don't understand it, and it makes me so sad. Thanks for your support group, live chats, and all you do. They have both been a lifesaver for me. Light and love, Lauren. So, okay. Yes, I totally agree 100% with you on every single point here. So let's just talk about this book for a little bit. So 50 Shades of Grey is, I don't know if you guys knew this, how that book became so famous and where that whole kind of storyline developed was actually Twilight, the book Twilight. So the author of 50 Shades of Grey, she was in a fan fiction group online, and where people would take characters from different books and they would create their own stories with these characters in them. Well, she took Edward and Bella from Twilight and then put them in kind of this super, BDSM type relationship. And then it became 50 Shades of Grey. So that's how the movie became so popular. It was because it was a Twilight story that was rewritten in a way to give to give a lot of the fans what they wanted, which was for those characters to actually have sex. Because the Twilight books, those were very clean, a clean romance up until the final book where they got married. And so that's why the popularity of the book. So as an aside, did she mean for it to be an abusive relationship? I don't think so. I really don't think so. My guess is when I read the book, and I only read the first one, and it took all I had to get through it. And it's very, it's not very good writing. And but not to knock her. I mean, this started off as like fan fiction. Like she wasn't a big time, she wasn't an author. I mean, she was somebody that was writing fan fiction. So I don't mean to knock her. I think it's awesome that she put herself out there like that, But yeah, I don't think it was thought through. I think it was, she just thought, because in Twilight, Edward's character is super creepy. He's stalking Bella, basically. And it's the same dynamic. So here you have, in Twilight, you have Edward, who's several hundred years old. He's cultured. He's wealthy. He's handsome. He's, worldly. He's all of these things. And Bella is not. She's innocent. She's naive. She's clumsy. She's kind of this everyday character. I forget what the literary term for her kind of character is. What is it? I'm drawing a blank. What is it called? I want to say it's like a Betty Sue. That doesn't sound right to me. Shoot. I don't remember the name of the character. It's a character, it's a trope where you have this female character who there's no redeeming quality about her, but yet all of these men are just totally infatuated with her. Molly Sue? This is going to bug me. Hold on a second. Hold on. What is that called? Mary Sue. Okay, Mary Sue. Geez. Okay. Yes. So it's just kind of this unremarkable character that unexplainably every man just loves her. So that's the character of Bella. That's the character of the gal, and I forget her name, in 50 Shades of Grey. Anastasia. So, and it's the same dynamic, right? So then you also have this billionaire guy in Christian Grey, right? He's worldly, he's cultured, he's incredibly, sexually educated. She's the exact opposite. There's nothing really interesting or remarkable about her other than her innocence, which is in itself really problematic, that somebody would be attracted to how innocent and naive another person, that right there is like really problematic. And frankly, that's a big thing that's problematic when you have a big age difference in relationships. If you have a person who is, 16 and the other person's 24, or the person's, 18, the other person's 32. There's an ocean of difference in that. And there's just something wrong with a person. I think if they're going after somebody where there's that much of an age difference, what do you have in common? Generally nothing. So, and if the person that's that much older does have something in common with a high schooler, there's something problematic with them, because they're not emotionally in their own like age group. So to me, it's just, It's a sign of a problem. So anyways, okay, back to 50 Shades of Grey. So yes, I don't think the book was meant to be abusive. I just don't think she understood the elements of abuse in it. And so what I find interesting with this book is I don't have problems that I think a lot of normal people have with the book. So what I found problematic with the book isn't so much that they were involved in this, like, kind of kinky relationship. It's the way they went, the way that he especially went about it. So if a person's in a dynamic, especially a dynamic like that, where the BDSM dynamic, it's a power exchange. It's all about this exchange of power and control. In a healthy, S&M type dynamic, there has to be that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. So there needs to be ideally a safe word involved. There's this understanding of what both people are into and what they're not into, and where lines are, and how what boundaries are going to be explored, and like when is too much. And the difference is, like, in an abusive relationship, the controlling person has all the power. In a healthy S&M type relationship, the submissive person has all the power. So they're the ones that say, this is how far I'm willing to go. That was not the case with 50 Shades of Grey. Christian Grey, he wasn't respecting her safe word. He wasn't respecting her wants and needs. He wasn't respecting her boundaries. He sold her car without her permission or consent. He showed up on in another state when she was visiting her mother. Just the constant thing. And so, yes, that's an abusive relationship. Not being, then he's not emotionally available at all. He won't even sleep next to her. Like, there's just no connection there whatsoever. And then, of course, it feeds into this delusion that Hollywood sells women, especially, of, you can fix this man. Like, here's this amazing man, and why she even loves him is anybody's guess. There's kind of this joke that was going around the internet, like, it's only sexy because he's a billionaire. Like, if he lived in a trailer, and had no job, it would be abusive. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like, what is sexy about some guy who continues to push your boundaries and stalks you and is completely obsessive about you? Like, it's not love. Like, that's intensity. That's not sincerity. It's love bombing. It's not love. Like, these very, very different concepts, but so commonly confused. And I think a lot of women that liked these books, they liked the idea of, because love bombing and feeling like you are, it's that somebody would just be so infatuated with you, right? They're so taken with you, and to the point where they just want to make you their whole world. Sure, it's a very, like, maybe romantic, silly fantasy, especially if you're in kind of like a mediocre marriage. Like, I could see the appeal of it, where you're like, it'd really be nice to have somebody that was really into me. But it's not a healthy. Nothing about those books it's not healthy at all. So, if you get a chance, watch my video on that, on 50 Shades of Grey. I think it's called is 50 Shades of Grey Abuse. And I go through a lot of, like, the different points in the movie of separating out, like, what's abusive, what's not, and why. So a lot of people had issues with the fact that he was, tying her up, or that there were these certain kind of bondage elements in that. I didn't have that, to each his own, but it was the way they went about it. That there wasn't an equal power exchange. There wasn't a consensual power exchange at all. He was just taking that. And so that's when it became abusive, because it became about power and control for him. It wasn't an exploring of power and control. So to me, that was the big difference. Okay. Oh, good. Conchetta says, thank you so much. I do love myself. You're right. I loved who I thought he was. Thanks. Yay. Good. I'm glad. That's a statement. I feel like I have to kind of tread lightly with that and I get it. Because those emotions can be so intense and people, sorry, I just got a phone call. I hope that didn't mess up the live stream. People can feel really upset by, like that kind of being questioned. So let's see if this reconnects. The live stream, I think, is frozen. Is it still frozen or is it going? It's like on the goofiest picture of me too. Oh, let's see. Oh, I can't tell. Let's see if anybody in the chat can tell. It looks like it's loading on YouTube. Hey, Bob is here. Cecilia is here. Oh, shoot. Okay. Okay, let's turn this off and I'll come back on in a second. Oh, I don't want to do that. Is it going to get better? Okay, let's see. Yes, no, maybe so. There's a delay. I can't tell what's going on. Oh, gosh. Oh, it's so frustrating. I'll have to remember to turn my phone off. Okay. I'm going to see you guys here back in a second. Try this again. Take 2.